Liberty women's basketball is getting a head start on the 2014 season, now joined by head coach Carrie Green. And Coach, we're at the practice facility. Give us an idea of what you're working on as you prepare for your trip to Israel.
Well, Alan, first of all, we're excited to go to Israel. I think it's like going home. In fact, a couple years ago when we got over there, the guide actually, when we got off the bus, he said, "Welcome home." And I thought, wow, it is what we're all about as Christians, going home. And you know, it's an exciting time to see where Jesus lived, where Jesus walked, and to see the Bible actually come to life. You know, as the scriptures we're reading about Mount of Olives and Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, and to actually be in those places, it just makes things come alive. Purpose is obviously to see our Christian faith come alive, and from a basketball perspective to gain some advantage through the development of our players and our team chemistry. Just NCAA doesn't allow us to take all of our players. We're missing some freshmen, so we do miss that part of team building and the concepts there. But the NCAA allows us to have 10 practices and 10 days of practice, and we're trying to capitalize on that and get healthy. We're still, unfortunately, not totally healthy. I wished I had a healthy team going. So from a coaching perspective, a little cautious as we go over there and we do the tour, and then as we end the tour, we'll be participating in what we call the friendship games. And that's an exciting time for us there. We don't know anything about our competition other than it'll be international. Maybe some teams from Nigeria, definitely some Palestinian and Israeli teams that we'll be playing against.
And when you look at what you did 4 years ago, will some of the experiences be the same, or are you going to try some new things?
Well, there's probably some new things and some changes that have happened over the last 4 years, but the outline is, generally speaking, the same. We'll start up in the Galilee area, and as you looked at the Old Testament, it gives you a picture of God's character, but in the New Testament, it's talking more about Jesus and the New Covenant, and probably 90% of the New Covenant or the New Testament is about Jesus when he grew up, you know, and then as we get into the Gospels, it's, well, for 33 or 30 years of his life, he was in the Galilee area, you know, as a carpenter and working with fishermen and things like that. So we'll start there and spend a lot of time before we get in Jerusalem, where the latter part of his life was lived, and go to the Mount of Olives. And we also want to visit the Dead Sea because of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so we're going to follow, generally speaking, the same outline. And I think it'd be more exciting. Last time I was all ears and eyes and seeing things, but I think I can digest it a little bit more this time and enjoy it and help the players try to enjoy it.
Coach, it gives me chills when you talk about going to where Jesus walked and seeing some of the things that he was able to experience. What has been the reaction of the players before they get ready to hop on that plane to go over there?
Well, I think they're excited, but the overall is just awe and silence. It's just like, wow, and it's just really real, and being humbled by this experience, even as I envision it after already doing it once, just standing on a Mount of Olives and knowing that, you know, Jesus said he's coming back right here again, and that's where he left. That's one of my favorite places, and of course the Garden Tomb, and the experience of the players in the past have been just awestruck, sort of stepping back and digesting it and just letting it all soak in, and have some wonderful experiences. There'll be a lot of pictures taken, you know, some blogs, and right. And so we hope our fans will see that, and overall, I want to see the players just develop their faith even more through this experience, and when they do that, I think it's going to affect them as a student athlete, and just their overall testimony and as they impact the world for Christ.
Like we talked about, you're getting a head start on this season coming up here in the winter. Where have you seen the biggest jump in player development, the few workouts you've had?
Well, we've had a lot. We've been working on just some character development. So first of all, I would think that overall, just understanding and awareness of some weakness, some areas, intensity in their effort. So I think that is the area. We've got a little better focus on some certain players that they needed to recalibrate. They needed to review and be aware of some of the things that they were doing simply from like diet and sleeping and how that affects them and their alertness and awareness on the floor. And I've seen a great amount of improvement in those areas just because of areas that we have addressed. And but overall, I think awareness of areas that we need to address. So, and primarily in intensity and effort.
So give me, in a nutshell, if you will, kind of an itinerary, how many days you're going to be over there, and who might be doing some of the blogs and some ways for the fans to follow the experience.
Well, first of all, we'll let the players sort of determine that. We'll coach them a little bit in those areas, but we'll leave on June the 4th, and we'll come back on June 18th, so it's 14 days. And you could basically split that. First 7 days will be a tour, and the last 7 days will be in competition in a city called Eilat, which is in the lower part of the country. It's extremely hot there. I mean, it's running, a low would be in the 90s, okay?
Yep.
It's hitting around the 100 degree mark. So we have to stay very hydrated and trying to stay away from injuries there. But we'll begin flying in Tel Aviv. We won't spend very much time there because it's such a modernized, beautiful city. It's considered Silicon Valley of Europe because the technology is so great. We'll go up to the Sea of Galilee area where Jesus spent 30 years of his life up in there. And we'll go on a boat ride up there. We'll see where the Sermon on the Mount was, Beatitudes, and after about 3 days in that area, we'll start venturing down to the Dead Sea and Jordan River, and we'll go to Megiddo or Armageddon, the valley there where the final battle will be, and we'll overlook Jericho, and as we go into Jerusalem, we'll look down on Bethlehem because it's a lot of politics over there. So we cannot, it's too much of a hassle to go into the city of Bethlehem, and it's not quite friendly to Americans right there. And so we'll spend about 2 or 3 days in the Jerusalem area and going to the Mount of Olives and Garden Tomb and experiencing where Pilate's palace is. And there's a jailhouse or a dungeon there that it's been said that Jesus spent that half a night in there because that night he was there. He was being beaten and thrown in to the dungeon there, and walking the walk that he perhaps took while he carried his cross to Golgotha, and obviously seeing the Garden Tomb there. And then as we leave that area there, we'll go back to Tel Aviv to fly to Eilat and get in the competition down there. Now, all I can say, maybe 5 or 6 games, maybe more. Friendship games. It's you're in Europe or Middle East. You're scheduled to play, but when you're playing and who you're going to play, you just got to be kicked back and laid back and say, okay, we're here, you know. And the games usually happen. Okay. And there'll be one day there that we'll be able to go out on the Red Sea because they'll have like 2 days of competition or 3 days of competition, and then the parties or the teams will actually go back to Jerusalem. We don't need to go back to Jerusalem. They'll take a bus drive, 2-hour bus drive back to Jerusalem and then come back. And it's an all-day event. And during that day, we'll probably go out on the Red Sea and we've had good experiences out there. I mean, it may be snorkeling or fishing, or we'll just have a good team activity out there, and then finish up couple more days of competition, and then get back.
Wow, sounds like an enriching trip, not only spiritually but physically and culturally, you name it. So we appreciate your time, and we'll be following the progress on the trip coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
As head coach of the women's basketball team, Carrie Green, be sure to log on to libertyflames.com for exclusive details on their trip coming up to Israel. For the coach, I'm Alan York for the Liberty Flames Sports Network.